On the afternoon of January 29, 2013, a school bus driven by a 66-year-old Charles Poland transported students from different grades to their homes. At 15:32, the driver directed the bus in reverse to an area between the trees for further reversal. At this time, Charles Poland saw how he was heading towards the bus, a familiar man who was carrying a Walmart bag filled to the brim with broccoli. The bus driver opened the front door. The man entered the bus and pulled out a firearm. He handed the driver a letter that began with the words, "I have something to tell," and immediately said that he wanted to take two children, 6 and 8 years old, both boys, from the bus with him. The man also warned of serious consequences if the bus driver suddenly refused to comply with his demands.
I need two boys, 6 to 8 years old, two boys, come on.
Can't do it.
Do it.
Sorry. No.
Do it. Do it.
The children ducked behind the seat and then jumped out to see what was happening. 15-year-old Tri Watts sat in the second to last row. He stopped playing on his iPhone and dialed the police number. The guy explained to the dispatcher that right now an unknown man was trying to take children from the bus. Meanwhile, the man turned to the 5-year-old boy Ethan. His mother told other people that her son had autism, and that was why he sat in the front seat, under the watchful eye of the driver.
Come here, kid. The two in the back seat. You, the girl, and that boy right there. Come here.
The man began to call the boy to him, but the Poland driver blocked access to the passage and said that he would have to deal with him first. The man then used a firearm. There was a bang and the driver screamed. The bus rolled back, and a few seconds later, 4 more bangs were heard. Charles Poland fell onto the side window. Gradually, the bus slowed down and stopped. The man lifted Ethan from his seat and, leaving the bus, put the boy on his shoulder. At this time, the children got out of the bus and ran away. After some time, the man called the police back, identified himself by name, and said that he was in the bunker with the boy. The man further indicated at which address he could be found, and also told the dispatcher that the police could only talk to him through a white plastic pipe at the main gate. A few minutes later, sheriff's deputies arrived at the location. A plastic pipe protruded straight out of the ground for about 1.5 meters. The bunker was covered with a mound of earth. The only entrance to the bunker from above was closed by a heavy wooden hatch. The police leaned over the pipe, and from there came a man's warning that if they tried to enter the shelter by force, something terrible would happen. The sheriff's deputies already knew who they were dealing with. It was 65-year-old Jimmy Dykes, a former Vietnam veteran. Over the next few hours, state police and FBI agents arrived at the Dykes bunker. Law enforcement immediately began analyzing Dykes' identity and gradually gained information about who he was. Jimmy Lee Dykes is a decorated Navy veteran. According to his neighbors, he lived in isolation and had long lost contact with his ex-wife and 2 daughters. The man loved firearms and hated authorities. His wife once worked as an exotic dancer in a bar, and he often raised his hand to her. The man was arrested several times for various offenses, but then released again. Jimmy Dykes previously lived in Florida, where he worked as a surveyor and truck driver, but after a dispute with his boss, Dykes was fired from his last trucking job, and at the age of 65, he moved to the small town of Midland City, where he grew vegetables and collected complaints against local authorities. The man told his neighbors a lot that he did not like all the animals and people who approached his land. Dykes was clear that he would use firearms against any animal that encroached on his territory. It also became known that at times the man patrolled his property until midnight with a firearm and a flashlight. Back in 2012, Dykes told his neighbor he wanted to dig a hurricane and storm shelter on the property. He talked about surviving hurricanes in Florida. Dykes ended up paying a neighbor to help dig an underground bunker. The men dug stubbornly for weeks, making their way through dense layers of red clay. They installed beams and paneled the walls. From the wooden hatch, a wooden staircase descended at an angle along a narrow shaft, leading to a small niche. The main room was high enough for a full-length person to stand in it. When the men had finished all the work, Dykes asked his neighbor to climb inside and shout very loudly to check if any sounds were heard from underground. At that moment, the neighbor thought that Dykes wanted to make sure in case screaming would help if a tree suddenly fell from a storm and blocked the hatch on the roof of the bunker. And it seemed strange to the neighbor that Dykes seemed quite pleased that the voices did not penetrate through the thickness of the earth. That same year, Dykes drove his neighbor to Walmart and spent the entire trip railing against new gun laws. On the way back, the man was thinking about how he could keep several people in the church building one Sunday until reporters covered his claims on television. The police soon found out that Jimmy Dykes and the Charles Poland bus driver knew each other. Poland rode the bus every school day along the private road where Dykes lived. On the afternoon of Monday, January 28, the driver of a Charles Poland school bus turned onto the highway near a local church. He drove his bus towards the Jimmy Dykes site to drop off children who lived nearby. The Poland driver then turned onto a lawn that Dykes had recently cleared and leveled specifically to give the school bus enough room to turn around. Jimmy Dykes walked up to the door of the bus and Charles Poland thanked him for the new comfortable seat. After that, Dykes asked what the driver liked more, carrots or broccoli. The driver replied that it was broccoli. Dykes told him that they would see each other the next day. Charles Poland told his wife that his new friend Jimmy Dykes looked like a man in need of a friend. The next morning, Tuesday, January 29, the driver left a dozen fresh eggs and a jar of homemade nutmeg jelly on the front seat of the Jimmy Dykes van, along with a note. It said the following: "I am Charles Poland, a school bus driver. I'm sorry I missed you. Left you some eggs and nutmeg jelly. See you later." Jimmy Dykes was scheduled to appear in court the next day, January 30, but Dykes was not going to appear for the trial. An analysis of Jimmy Dykes' personality showed that he did not create the school bus turnaround area in order to be useful to society. The man had an ulterior motive to stop the bus and take the children with him, using them in an attempt to share his grievances with the world. He demanded that a journalist and a television cameraman come and broadcast the news live in his bunker. According to the man's plan, as soon as the reporter was next to him, he would hold his hand and share stories with the world. And then Dykes wanted to kill himself. But at the same time, the journalist would be able to get out of the bunker. Agents delivered Dykes a cell phone through the hatch, so he could only use it to talk to law enforcement. Because the boy had Asperger's syndrome and attention hyperactivity disorder, Dykes gave him medication sent through a PVC pipe along with a coloring book and crayons. Dykes provided the boy with food, water, medicine, and toys. With each new day of negotiations, the problems continued to grow. Agents undetectedly managed to lower a hidden camera into the bunker and saw that Dykes not only had a firearm, but also a device that caused mass harm. Agents may also have noticed that there is a television in the bunker and that Dykes regularly watches the news. He had enough supplies to last him for several weeks. The only official the man respected or recognized was the elected sheriff of the county. FBI agents tried to use this information to their advantage. They asked Sheriff Olson to publicly thank Jimmy Dykes for taking care of Ethan. They needed Dykes to look at the boy with compassion and let him go. Some signs indicated that he may have had some kind of empathy for Ethan and was somehow caring for him in a grandfatherly manner. The reality was that Jimmy Dykes lacked empathy for other people. Jimmy Dykes was never given the opportunity to speak to the media and tell his story to the world. Everything wasn't going the way he wanted, and the man was getting angrier every day. He talked about teaching Ethan how to power a homemade device that would cause mass destruction. Jimmy Dykes and Ethan developed an affection over time. This has become a huge concern for law enforcement agencies. One day, Ethan told Dykes that he loved him, and this made the man upset. Jimmy Dykes had his own specific goals, and they did not involve gaining affection. Due to his unstable upbringing, Ethan has been in and out of foster care for most of his life. After a week of failed negotiations, it was time for decisive action. Agents, analyzing the condition of Dykes, developed a plan. Law enforcement officers knew that the man had 2 daughters and had not seen them for many years. One of the daughters, Cindy, agreed to come to a meeting with her father and try to convince him. The woman herself had a child of the same age. Agents told Cindy that she would talk to her father via video call via laptop. Cindy brought photos of all 4 of her children to show her grandchildren's father, as well as a photo of her and her father lighting sparklers. Jimmy Dykes was excited about the upcoming conversation with his daughter and asked the policeman for a clean shirt and a comb. At about 3 p.m. on February 4th, 2 police officers were already watching on the screen as Jimmy Dykes pulled the laptop through the hatch. The man brought a computer with a hidden camera pointed away from his body. The device recorded the passing steps of the stairs as well as a panorama of the premises. According to the FBI plan, at this time Ethan was supposed to be in a safe place and away from the bunker shaft. After Jimmy Dykes took over the computer to video chat with his daughter, the FBI was able to see that Ethan was quite far away from the man. According to the agents, the entire operation should have taken 7 seconds if everything went as planned. As soon as the video connection was established, Cindy Dykes began to cry when she heard her father's voice, but she never had the opportunity to speak to him. At 3:12 p.m., the SWAT team broke the bunker lid and, using a hidden camera, saw Dykes holding a firearm. One of the agents jumped into the bunker shaft, but Dykes set a minute trap, a grid of wires blocking the path into the bunker, and the agent became entangled in the wires. Meanwhile, Dykes fired a firearm towards the agents. They managed to pull out a member of the squad, and a moment later flash noise devices were thrown into the bunker shaft. The bunker filled with smoke. Thus, visibility was close to zero. Seconds later, Jimmy Dykes died. At the same time, the agent reached the very bottom, immediately felt the boy, and covered him with his body. Ethan was soon taken to the hospital and was in good condition. 3 weeks later, the bunker in which Dykes kept Ethan for 7 days was destroyed by the authorities.